If you could delete one game from history, push a button and make it so it never existed, what game would it be? For me, it would be The Last of Us. I really don't like this game. I don't like what this game represents. I don't like modern Naughty Dog in general. But we're not here to talk about that today. Naughty Dog is the developer responsible for The Last of Us, but they weren't always known for pretentious, uninspired, Oscar-bait movie game slop designed by committee. If we go back 2 console generations before The Last of Us came out, they were responsible for the game series that got me into video games in the first place, Crash Bandicoot. Fun, innovative, simple platform games that relied on tight moment-to-moment gameplay to keep the player entertained. I love those games. Half of my channel is currently about them, but we're still missing a piece of this puzzle. On the PS1, Naughty Dog made the Crash trilogy. On the PS3, they made Uncharted and the last game I bought from them. What about the PS2? Where is The Lost Link? As a kid, I had no clue. My first console was a PS1, but then I got a GameCube. I only got my hands on a PS2 much later, and at that point I didn't really give much of a shit anymore. As it turns out, Naughty Dog didn't own the rights to Crash Bandicoot, and when the PS2 rolled around they decided to come up with a new IP. While Crash was being passed around from developer to developer, releasing games that ranged from weirdly good to absolute dog shit, his creators were trying to recreate the magic with something new, and out of that came Jak and Daxter. I actually bought the first 2 Jak games years ago and never got around to playing them. Well, I've been playing a lot of Crash lately, and a bunch of nerds just got done with porting all 3 mainline Jak games to PC, so I figured this might be a good time to change that. Let's get to it. Hey, before we start actually, remember to like, subscribe, and comment on how beautiful my anime girl PNG looks today. I didn't add anything new to it, it just looks beautiful every day. I might draw a smile on her if we ever get to 10 million subscribers, so do your part. Also, sorry for how long this video took. I got sick. This is a one-man project, so there wasn't really much I could do. Hopefully my voice sounds all gruff and manly and sexy because of the constant coughing and not like complete shit.
I have spent my life searching for the answers that my father and my father's fathers failed to find. Who were the precursors? Why did they create the vast monoliths that litter our planet? How did they harness eco, the life energy of the world? What was their purpose? And why did they vanish? I have asked the plants, but they do not remember. The plants have asked the rocks, but the rocks do not recall. Even the rocks do not recall.
That's actually a pretty cool intro. Alright, you have my attention. So, Jak and his annoying friend are these ugly elf things. I don't know who this design appeals to. They remind me of those ugly troll dolls with the fuzzy hair. Not a fan. Regardless, they're on this island that just screams evil villain hideout, and surely enough, here are the evil villains. Boob Lady and this guy whose voice has so many filters I can barely make out what he's saying half the time.
Possess precursor items, you know what to do.
Our heroes are attacked by this minotaur thing, and Jak, the tall ugly elf thing, uses some junk that he found laying around to defend himself. The thing explodes and Daxter, the short and annoying ugly elf thing, falls into a pool of dark goo. Unfortunately, he doesn't die. He gets turned into a furry instead, making him even more annoying. Oh boy, I guess he's less ugly now at least.
Kings and shit.
This green sage guy who was narrating the introduction is Samus. I like him, he doesn't give a shit.
You finally took a much-needed bath, but in a bathtub filled with dark eco.
Look, old man, are you gonna keep yapping, or are you gonna help me out of this mess?
I'm gonna keep yapping.
He explains only a sage who lives far to the north might be able to turn Daxter back to his ugly elf form, and that he has lost contact with the other sages who maintain teleportation portals on the way there, so we have to go by foot. His hot daughter shows up and explains she can equip some vehicle called a zoomer with a heat shield so they can go past this volcanic passage. That's the only way out of the region they're in. This is Kira and she's the generic science girl. Her voice is pretty annoying.
Fly over it, if you had a zoomer equipped with a heat shield.
But I can think of a couple other qualities she has that make her presence more bearable. To power the heat shield we'll need 20 MacGuffins. Yeah, so Jak and Daxter is a classic Scramblo-like collectathon platformer in a tradition of Banjo-Kazooie. We got large open areas with a lot of shit to collect. Completing certain objectives rewards us with collectibles that are used to unlock more areas. Here the Jiggy/Power Stars stand in our power cells. They're everywhere. Sometimes they're just floating around, sometimes they jump out of something we kill. Sometimes they're given to us by members of the local community after we complete certain tasks or just bribe them with the other main collectible, precursor orbs. These are the notes if we're still using Banjo-Kazooie lingo. There's a bunch of them sprinkled around the game world and they don't really do anything by themselves, but we still want to collect all of them. Kira tells us to go talk to the villagers and explore around, but first we have to go through the tutorial. Hooray. Geyser Rock is a pretty straightforward little level that teaches us what the game is all about, mostly. Oh shit, inverted camera, gross. Let's fix this. First of all, I love the way this game looks. Naughty Dog have always been technical wizards. The games have always looked great for their time, and this still holds true even today, despite their games being total dog shit now. The light rain, the bright green grass, the beautiful skybox. The game even has a dynamic day and night cycle. It has zero gameplay impact, but it's really fucking cool. I say the level mostly teaches how to play the game because while it does stop us dead in our tracks to tell us to walk into the floating Easter egg, as if that wasn't going to be everyone's first instinct. I only found out I could spin Daxter around after jumping to get some extra airtime about halfway through the game. Don't get me wrong, I think it's good that the tutorial isn't particularly intrusive. It's okay to leave some stuff for the player to find through experimentation. Or maybe they wanted me to go read the manual, which I do actually have this time around. Would you look at that? What the fuck, dude? What's wrong with booklets? Why do we need all this shit? Well, whatever. In short, Jack has access to a jump, a double jump, that spin attack I mentioned, a forward punch that has a lot less range than it seems, a body slam that's actually a downward punch or something, and a roll he can chain into a long jump. The level also introduces these robot wasps that are basically Jinjos from Banjo-Kazooie. You also keep bringing up Banjo-Kazooie. You don't get to make a Scrimblow Bimblow game and not be compared to Banjo. Maybe I'll have to review that game to get it out of my system. Anyway, we'll get our power cell for collecting 7 of them. And finally, there's the gimmick of the game, I guess. If Jack passes through these energy balls, he'll be infused by their power, which makes him run faster, collect orbs by simply passing near them, and activate certain devices. The power goes away after a while though. Anyway, at the top of the level there's a shortcut we can activate to go back to the entrance, but the game won't let me leave because I'm still missing a power cell. After running around for a while, I found out I never collected the cell that spawned from the 7 wasps, because I'm retarded. Oh well, at least I get to see the level at night, which I assume no one else has because you'd have to suck incredible amounts of ass to take this long to finish the tutorial. So, enjoy. You're welcome. Same as the green guy tells us to go to the beach to clean up some shit for him as a suggestion of what to do next. But at this point, we're basically free to go where we please. Hey look, that's a carnivorous plant from Crash Bandicoot. Pretty sure it's the exact same model too. Cool. We can talk to Kira on our way out.
Hey, baby. What do you say you and I go cruising on this A-Grav Zoomer?
Rule number 1, I don't date animals.
You don't know what you're missing.
Oh, shut the fuck up. So, as we go to the beach to look for the magical ball things, we can begin to appreciate what Jak and Daxter does that makes it stand out from the many 3D collectathons that preceded it. Its world is basically entirely seamless. No loading screens, no levels floating over a poorly disguised void. It's all just there. It's not an open world game, everything is still connected by paths and enclosed by walls, but it really feels quite cohesive. It's kind of like Dark Souls in its world structure, though not quite as complex. It's really cool and probably the single biggest technical achievement it's able to claim. If we take the exit to the left of the village, we'll find ourselves at Sandover Beach. It's a pretty straightforward area. What little complexity there is to it is thanks to its 2-level layout. For most of it, we can choose to travel by the shore or over the cliffs, and we can move between them by platforming over these wheels that are spread out throughout the level. Naturally, if we want to grab as many collectibles as we can, we have to explore both. The vents that Samus pointed us towards are on the far end of the beach, and on the way there, we're sure to find quite a few more opportunities to collect more power cells, most of them having to do with abusing the local birds for some reason. There are also some ancient ruins here on the beach past Samus's experiments. This ancient civilization theme was present throughout the original Crash trilogy, especially in the first game. The best one, by the way. But it was always understated, never acknowledged by the characters. I've always liked it. Here the people who built these ancient ruins, the precursors, are central to the story. We had never actually learned who exactly they are, but their influence is constantly brought up. I actually think it's pretty cool that it's left a mystery. I don't know if the following games will actually touch on that. I'm sure they will, but here it's just left in the dark, and I like that. Completing the task we were sent here to take care of doesn't actually do anything other than give us another power cell. We don't even have to do it actually. It was mainly a story excuse to point us in the direction of this area so that we could find more power cells. At this point in the game, our only objective really is to gather 20 of them. It really is open like that. Back in the village, we can now trade some of the precursor orbs we found at the beach for even more power cells. Some of the villagers also want us to do some menial tasks for them, like this lazy farmer guy who wants us to go find his cows while he sleeps. In this area we can also find this giant statue with a really distracting voice.
Who awakens the oracle? Wait, one of you has the light within. From before time, I have watched and waited for the true hero to return.
He'll trade his eyes for 120 orbs each. Pretty expensive, but good to know. It's not like there's any other use for the orbs anyway. And just ahead is the entrance to yet another area, the Forbidden Jungle. It doesn't really feel all that forbidden. In fact, it seems like a common destination for fishing. This fisherman dude will let us borrow his boat so we can get to the island where Daxter got turned into a furry if we complete this shitty minigame for him, where we have to catch fish with a net. The word minigame makes me shiver after Crash Warped, but thankfully they're few and far between here. In fact, I think Jak and Daxter does gameplay variety really well, if anything. In this area we can also climb this huge tower using eco power for another cell, and then we can completely ignore the button right there that leads to the rest of the level and miss out on like 3 more cells and one of the very few boss fights in the game. Let's pretend like this footage is not from several hours later when I finally learned about this while watching the best speedrun of all time after beating the game.
Rob Schneider's about to find out that being Owen Wilson isn't all it's cracked up to be. Hey, what are you talking about? This is great.
Oh my God.
Wow, what a great thing to be, Owen Wilson.
I could bitch about this being missable, but I don't actually mind. If anything, this combines 2 things I really admire in video games. First is not being afraid of allowing players to miss out on certain content. Learning that there is more to a game world than it initially seems helps a lot with making that world feel believable. Second is punishing garbage players for being dumb and not paying attention. Anyway, we can activate a bunch of eco vents throughout the world down here, so if you notice me not using them later in the game, know that it's because I was a dumbass all the way back here. The boss that's down here is nothing to write home about really. It's a giant plan and the fight consists of beating up 3 waves of shitty minions it sends out and then jumping up a few leaves to punch it in the face. Regardless, since there aren't a whole lot of boss fights in the game, I figured I should talk about it. Other than a few random power cells laying around, the last thing of note here is the fact that we can use these huge mirrors to redirect energy back to the village so the mayor will give us another cell. As I said before, we can now take the fisherman's boat back to Misty Island. Back in the village, this hippie told us about how he couldn't work on his sculptures without his muse, which is a weird ferret cat thing. Fucking furries again. We can find it here and bring it back to him. I don't want to know what he's going to do with it, better not dwell on that. Misty Island is a bit of a jump in difficulty. Well, Jak and Daxter is never particularly difficult. There are pretty much no real consequences for that, except for having to listen to Daxter make some annoying fucking comment in your face about how you're dead.
Well, better you than me.
I take it back, dying in this game has terrible consequences. Well anyway, this place has some bottomless pits and a lot more enemies that are a lot more aggressive than what we've been dealing with so far. Dying never takes us back too far and there's no life system, so even if you're terrible at the game like I am, it's never too frustrating. What I find kind of annoying is that you can never tell where exactly you'll respawn after death. It always feels arbitrary. It's even dumber when you consider Naughty Dog themselves had already solved this problem in the original Crash Bandicoot back in fucking 96. There's this arena here where we have to fight a few waves of enemies using the new Rad Eco, which makes Jak stronger, for a power cell and then some platforming over these walkways. It's fine, but I was dying too much due to my aforementioned sucking, and Daxter was starting to get on my nerves, so let's go back to the village and move on to the next area already. We should have enough power cells for the shield thing at this point. Miss Coombait gets the zoomer ready for us and explains we have to avoid going over lava for too long so the thing won't overheat and explode. There are some water balloons spread around the level that can help cool it off. Some of the boxes here explode and damage us, but I don't really think they explain that before we get the opportunity to drive straight into one of them, so that's kinda cheap. Other than that, we still have to worry about collecting orbs and wasps here for an extra power cell. It took me a little bit to get used to the zoomer controls. They feel a bit weird, kind of floaty. The handling isn't as responsive as I would have liked. We got another cell at the end and we can now move on to the second sort of hub area of the game, Rock Village. As we get to it, we find a trashed hut with a teleportation device inside. As we activate it, same as in Kira, come out and make it their new base of operations or something. The blue sage that was supposed to be responsible for this area is nowhere to be found, and there's a big monster throwing flaming rocks at the village. Murdering it is our next objective, and we'll need 45 power cells to move a boulder that's blocking the way to it. We can also use the teleportation device to go back to the previous area and look for whatever power cells we missed there. As with the first village area, there are a few NPCs spread around here that will sell us power cells for precursor orbs and hand out a few side quests. There's Archaeology Girl who wants us to guide some moles back into their hole, Gambler Guy who wants us to beat a time trial, and Overacting Warrior Man.
Oh sure, I was tough once. Maybe even the toughest of them all. I single-handedly defended this village from those horrid creatures for almost a year.
Who wants 90 orbs to fix a bridge. The area is surrounded by water, and if we stay in it for too long, a giant fish will come and eat us alive. I'm sure this didn't traumatize any children whatsoever. Other than that, there are 3 other areas connected to it where the bulk of the cells we'll need to progress are. First, there's the Precursor Basin, an entire area that requires use of the zoomer. As I said before, I don't think it controls very well. The area is not too big and we don't need to grab every single power cell to proceed, so whatever. It's not terrible. This is the only area in the game that's built around the zoomer outside of the few closed off passages that connect hub worlds. I'd hate the zoomer a lot more if vehicle levels were half the game, but as it stands it's just a distraction. I'll even say the momentum feels kinda good here, even if the handling is not the best. We can find those moles the archaeologist wanted to save here, and the time trial track the barrel guy asked us to beat, so that's another 2 cells. Next we're going to the underwater Lost Precursor City by taking this elevator. It's a somewhat linear area that consists of large rooms connected by corridors and slides. There's usually 1 or 2 puzzles to be solved in each of them for power cells. The whole area is pretty platforming heavy. I like these rotating platforms that come in pairs. Whenever we step on one of them, it becomes the axis around which the other one rotates. This allows us to use them to get pretty much anywhere on a horizontal plane. A few puzzles revolve around positioning them properly, planning how to use them and then executing. It's a good idea and pretty well executed, especially when combined with the blue eco mechanic that adds extra movement speed and a time limit to the equation. I like how the level looks. We can see the ocean floor outside through windows, and beyond that it has an interesting enough Lost Civilization vibe to it, with weird architecture that helps activate my neurons and gets me to wonder about the precursors and their society. In terms of gameplay, this is my favorite level so far. There's very little bullshit here, just a lot of platforming challenges and puzzles one after the other. It's engaging. I like the aesthetics, but I think I prefer the green fields above. That being said, this is also when the limitations of the game's movement mechanics start becoming apparent. The thing is, for a platforming mascot, Jack doesn't actually control all that well. I think the issue is mainly with his momentum. He doesn't get a lot of it, and it's really hard to shift in the air. It feels heavy basically. The animations are all really well made, but that also contributes to making everything feel a lot less snappy. Compare Jack's range of movement to Crash's. It's night and day. Jack is too concerned with realism and the game feels worse because of it. Even the roll move that's equivalent to Crash's slide feels a lot slower and floatier. You get a lot less control over it too. Feels more like the slide in Crash Twinsanity, which Naughty Dog had nothing to do with, though not as bad. At least it can be cancelled mid-roll, but once you chain it into a jump and leave the ground, you're locked in a trajectory and can't do anything about it. If you give up on a jump and try to turn back, you have to use a spin to gain some extra air time, or else you'll almost certainly die because of how limited air control is. Eventually there's a sort of chase sequence. Can we even call it a chase sequence? Well, we have to climb this shaft as dark eco floods the room. Getting caught means death. Well, canonically I suppose it would turn Jack into an annoying furry like Daxter, so I guess the game is just saving us from having to deal with that. I don't like the sequence. The game doesn't actually lock us to a 2D plane here, so it's easy to misjudge the direction direction we should be holding and end up dead. Deep into the lava we find a capsule that shoots us up back to the surface. There's another power cell on top of this structure and it's kind of awkward to get to. Samus tells us to go deal with some dirigible that's parked over the boggy swamp just around the corner. There's a new type of eco here, yellow eco. It gives Jack a ranged attack temporarily. Our main objective here is to find the 4 tether points that are keeping the dirigible in place and destroy them with the yellow eco. For each of them we get a power orb. Getting all of them will take us around the entire swamp that's laid out like a giant circle. I like the rainy atmosphere. Also we get a new vehicle here, sort of. This huge bird that we can ride. It's pretty limited in where we can take it, but it's actually pretty fun to control. It can cover huge distances with its jump. A little further ahead we find this smelly redneck guy who claims to be the owner of the swamp. He wants us to play a crappy shooting gallery minigame where we need to protect some muffins from giant swamp rats. Naturally this means another power cell. The final tether point is just around the corner and just past it a shortcut back to the entrance, but since I'm shit at the game I actually missed the first one. I had to go look for it before leaving the area. We should have plenty of power cells now, so let's go deal with the big guy throwing rocks at the village.
Great! You have the cells for the machine. They ought to provide enough power to lift that boulder. There we go. Now be careful facing that monster lurker at the top.
Wait! I'll stay here and protect Kira. Jack, I think you're ready to handle that monster without me.
Why is Daxter in this game? The fight is pretty simple. It mostly takes place over platforms floating on lava. We have to dodge boulders that the boss shoots at us for the first phase, and it can be kind of tricky to get the timing down at first. I don't know if there's a pattern to it, if it's random or if he shoots them based on where we are, but I found the best way to deal with them is to look at the boulders as they come out and only jump to another platform if one's coming our way. Genius shit, I know. Anyway, after a bit a cloud of blue eco will appear and the boss will create a larger platform that we can use to get closer to him. He'll send boulders rolling in our direction that we have to dodge. At the end of this platform is a cloud of yellow eco that we have to use to shoot him before he can throw a giant boulder in our direction. Then we have to make our way back to the 3 starting platforms and repeat this for 2 more phases. It's okay. We have to use the zoomer again to go through the mountain paths in order to reach the next hub area. This is supposed to be a race with these things on propellers to get to a detonator at the end of the track. It's not very competitive though, not hard at all. There's no heat mechanic this time around and I guess I got better at controlling the zoomer after the precursor basin. The Volcanic Crater is the 3rd and final hub in Jak and Daxter and it only contains 2 levels. Yeah, kind of anticlimactic. This game is actually really short. Not going for 100% it took me about 6 hours to beat. That's just a little over half the average time to beat Super Mario 64 or Banjo-Kazooie, according to how long to beat. I don't really mind short games, but I just wasn't expecting this one to be this short. To be fair, that's longer than any of the Crash Bandicoot games by Naughty Dog, but those were linear level based games, so it was expected. Anyway, there's another statue here selling cells for 120 each, and these 2 idiots down at the gem mine who sell a grand total of 4 for 90 each. I'll be honest, this is starting to feel like padding, and when the game is already this short, that's hard to excuse. Well, the sage that was supposed to be here is also missing, and we activate another teleport portal. The guy with the edgiest voice ever put to a game shows up. Turns out he is Gaul, the sage who Samus thought could turn Daxter back into an ugly elf, but he's been corrupted by Dark Eco and is now evil. Big surprise. They kidnapped all the other sages and want to use Dark Eco to rebuild the world, blah blah. We need 72 power cells to further improve the heat shield on the zoomer in order to follow them through the lava tube that leads to their citadel. First we'll go to the creatively named Snowy Mountain. It takes place on a mountain. And there's snow. There's also ice physics. At first I was getting annoyed because I assumed I had to ground pound these jar, whatever the fuck these things are, in order to break them, which was really annoying with the ice physics. Turns out I just had to land on them. Breaking all of them gives us a power cell. The enemies here start getting really aggressive and the camera doesn't really help with depth perception, so I was getting my ass kicked for a while before I adapted. The problem is the camera works really well horizontally, but it's very limited vertically, so I can never have it pointing more down downwards, which would help with telling how far enemies are, or how far platforms are for that matter. This has also been a bit of a problem. I like the winter atmosphere here, and I especially like how if we climb up to the higher parts of the area, we can see all the areas we've been through previously. There are 3 guys here trying to break through the mountain, apparently to find a dark eco reserve. Killing all 3 of them grants us a power cell. We need to use red eco to break their shields, so the challenge mainly comes from making it to them with the power up active. There's an area here where we can get the bird from the swamp level again and use it for a brief platforming section that's pretty fun. At the end of this section there's a button that opens the gate to the fortress that dominates the stage. The fortress itself is a pretty entertaining platforming course on the inside. Nothing crazy, we just have to navigate walkways and get to a power cell that's hanging around on top of a tower. There's even a little shortcut we can unlock halfway through, which I think is pretty nice. There's not much interesting left here, so let's go back. Now we'll go to the creatively named Spider Caves, where there are spiders. And it's also a cave, by the way. This level likes yellow eco quite a lot. We have to use it to shoot down spiders, centipedes that are crawling around, and dark crystals. The place looks pretty drab, but really, what else would you expect from a place called the Spider Caves? It's pretty atmospheric, I guess. I don't find the music in this game to be memorable at all, to be honest. I couldn't remember any of it after beating the game, but I guess it works for building an atmosphere. The cave wouldn't feel the same without the background music, and I think the snowy mountain we were just at also noticeably benefits from it. Best this main area is another cave. I had no idea how to deal with this enemy blocking the path, but the weird unpredictable checkpoint system worked in my favor this time and teleported me past it. There's a huge robot here surrounded by walkways. The edgelord did mention something about robots when he was revealing his evil plan back at the sage's hut, so I guess that has something to do with it. It's cool that the level design is contextualized like that. It's an engaging platforming section, quite open-ended. We can skip parts of it with well-placed long jumps, for example. I like it. There is a power cell at the very top. At this point we should have enough power cells to proceed, and if not, we can go buy a bunch of them from Dumb and Dumber and the statue with the stupid voice. We can now access the lava tube, the final zoomer track. It brings back the overheating mechanic from the first one. It's also quite long, but thankfully there's a checkpoint halfway through. We also get yellow eco for this one so we can shoot shit. Just having a button that makes you go pew pew makes any vehicle section more entertaining, if only by a little. So that's pretty cool. The zoomer still controls kind of bad though. The track leads straight into the Yellow Sage's lab. You know how it goes, teleport portal, cutscene. This time only Kira comes through though, and she reveals Samus has been kidnapped, same as the other sages. We have to rescue him as well.
Relax, sweetheart. I got everything under control.
Shut the fuck up. So yeah, this is the final level, and it's basically 4 obstacle courses, each of them leading to one of the kidnapped sages. The central chamber leads to each of those courses, and we can choose to rescue the blue, yellow, and red sages in any order. The courses circle back to the main room at the end, so we can get to the next one right away. The new gimmick here are platforms we can activate by slamming into a button. They come in a bunch of colors, and stepping on one of them will cause all others of the same color to fall down. It's creative, confusing, and quite challenging at times, especially when we also have to collect precursor orbs over the platforms. Is what I would say if we couldn't just fall down and keep the orbs pretty much consequence-free. Regardless, it's legitimately a good idea, and I find it strange that I have never seen it in any other games. Seems like something that would have showed up in a Mario game at this point. Maybe they patented it? Well, they're not Nintendo, but I don't fucking know. The platforming gets a lot more complex even beyond that here. There are a bunch of these spinning pizza platforms with missing slices. Pardon the analogy, it's my Italian blood speaking. First, the Yellow Sage room. This one is all about using blue eco in conjunction with these jump pads that make us go really high. I find it kind of a missed opportunity that these challenges don't really follow the sage's themes. I mean, the Yellow Sage is supposed to be a master of yellow eco, the blue sage of blue eco, and so forth, but the actual rooms we have to go through to get to them have nothing to do with that. Maybe that doesn't matter and I'm autistic, but the jury is still out on that one, so I'll take the liberty to bitch about it. Anyway, get to the pad, jump, line jack up with the next platform, make sure not to run out of eco. Fairly simple. It's like using the Deku scrub in Majora's Mask. Breaking this light bulb thing makes a power cell appear and freeze the sage.
Who would have thought I'd live to see the day when I needed to be rescued by a boy and his muskrat?
He immediately shits on Daxter, so he's alright in my book. Maybe that was the purpose of Daxter all along, now that I think about it. Not to make me sympathize with him, but rather make him so annoying I sympathize with all the other characters who shit on him constantly. Hey, that's pretty smart actually. The Blue Sage's room is a more traditional platforming section with floating platforms. I don't really have much to say about it. It's good. Probably the most fun out of the three. The Sage himself has an annoying voice and doesn't shit on Daxter, so I don't like him.
I will try to actuate the shield door by eliciting a conduit of energy between myself and the vast portal below!
The Red Sage's room starts with the toughest colored platforming section in the level and then gives us some yellow eco and drops us in a room full of enemies. What's most annoying about it is the fact that dying puts us back before the platforming part. These things are apparently called bunnies, by the way. These are some ugly fucking bunnies. The Sage not only doesn't insult Daxter, but he calls him a hero.
I'm Daxter. He's Jack. He's with me.
Good job, Daxter. You're a real hero.
Worst Sage, fuck him. Once all three sages are saved, a bunch of platforms float up from the void and we can now go look for Seamus, who is at the very top of the room. The climb is pretty annoying and it's made worse again by the fantastic checkpoint system that puts us back next to the last sage we saved if we die. Well, we get to Seamus and he tells us to go kill the final boss. I still can't understand half of what Gaul says.
And to think, you two traveled all this way for my help. Fools! Enjoy your front row seats to the recreation of the world!
Jack! Take the elevator up and stop that robot!
So, Gaul and his sister or whatever, whose significance to the story I still don't see, built this giant robot in order to open a silo of dark eco that they intend to do villain shit with. We have to blow it up. It's the best boss fight in the game. There are only like 3. To put it simply, we wait for a yellow eco cloud to appear and shoot the robot. Then we pick up some blue eco and run to a jump pad to avoid an insta-kill attack. For the first phase, the robot does nothing. For the second, a few enemies will jump out of the pit that's slowly opening in the middle of the arena, and we have to deal with them while shooting at the boss. For the third phase, he throws some bombs around the arena. Finally, for the final phase, the robot will shoot at us with its cannon arm. The 4 sages combine their forces and... Dude, this is just a final fight from Banjo-Kazooie. Come on, you can't blame me for bringing Banjo up constantly. Look at this shit. Anyway, the 4 sages combined their power to create an all-new white eco. Daxter says that might be able to change him back to his normal ugly elf form, which, well, there's no real reason for him to believe that as far as I can tell. It's just that dark equals bad and light equals good or something. Anyway, the point is that he gets it in his head that he has to choose between staying a furry and starting a polyamorous relationship with the hippie from the starting village and saving the world, or going back to being an ugly, short, ginger elf that'll just get bullied to death by anyone around him all the same, and he heroically chooses the former, which is supposed to make me hate him less. It doesn't. Also, it wouldn't be his choice anyway because he's useless. Touching the white eco causes Jack to transform. Do we get to play as Giant Jack and beat up the robot? No, actually the game just ended. The cutscene animators blow up the robot and our heroes return to their friends. Daxter gets to say one more retarded line before cock-blocking Jack and the credits roll. There's a secret ending if we get all 100 power cells, but it's literally fucking nothing. They stare at a light behind a doorway and never explain what it is. Not worth it. At least the secret ending in Crash Warped was funny. Well, at least we get to stare into the distance from the top of the Citadel after beating the final boss, and yeah, I still find it really cool that we can see all the landmarks from the areas we visited on our way here. And that's Jack and Daxter. Well, first of all, it's really short, and that doesn't really help sell the epic storyline it's going for. When you start to warm up to the setting, you realize you're basically halfway done. The movement is not up to the standards of the greats of the genre. There's very little momentum to it. Jack feels heavy and sluggish at worst. To put it plainly, I really don't find him to be satisfying to control. Movement in Crash Bandicoot felt snappy. Movement in Mario 64 felt liberating. Jack feels like he has a very restrictive speed cap applied to everything it does, and it doesn't feel good. He is, once again, most like Banjo. but Banjo had a much more extensive moveset. Which brings me to my next point. Jak and Daxter feels like Banjo-Kazooie running on a much more advanced engine, but with much fewer ideas. I guess where I'm getting at is, I just don't see Jak and Daxter as a gameplay first kind of game, and I feel like the signs that Naughty Dog would eventually take this path were always there when I think about it. They always came across as more interested in making cool things with their engines than perfecting the gameplay and level design of their games. Which is not to say they have ever been bad before Jak or even in Jak, it's just that it feels to me like the point of Crash 1, as much as I love it for its gameplay, was to blow the audience away with the visuals. Of Crash 3 was to show how many different gameplay styles they could cram into their game. In Jak they wanted to create a seamless, immersive world that felt real, and I think it nails that. Where it really excels and where it really outperforms all of the competition I mentioned is in its world building. In my Crash 2 video I talked about the secret warp room in that game, this weird platform in the middle of the sea from which you can see all the islands where the first game took place, and how that captured my imagination as a child. I didn't understand the limitations of video games back then. To me they were like portals to other dimensions. I would try to jump off the platform and I believed that if I could just press X down hard enough, Crash would gain enough distance to make it to those islands, and I would have a whole new world to explore. Of course, that's not how video games work, but that stuck with me, and ever since I've been chasing this feeling of being so immersed in a digital world that I forget it's not real. In Jak and Daxter, I can actually walk to those landmarks in the distance. I can actually go there. There are no arbitrary invisible walls blocking the way, and this is the game's biggest strength. If I were to strip Jak and Daxter of its visuals, its characters, its setting, its story, it would be a very average 3D platformer. It's the world building, the sense of consistency, the intriguing backstory that really make this game. But those things alone are only capable of elevating a game. They're what turn a great game into an amazing one. And I wouldn't say this is an amazing game in the end. It's not making my top 10 or anything, but I can see myself coming back to it every once in a while. Who knows, maybe I'll even come to appreciate it more in the future. As it stands, I'd say Jak does a lot of things really well, and a lot of things merely well enough. Overall, it's still pretty good. I wanted to play these games to try to understand how the company responsible for the game that got me into video games ended up making games that I absolutely detest. And to be honest, I didn't really expect to get a feel for it so fast. I can already see a bit of Darth Vader in this Anakin Skywalker. I'm sorry, that was probably the darkest thing I've ever said. Okay, probably I said worse. I guess this makes Daxter Jar Jar. Man, the pieces are all falling into place. The point is, Jak and Daxter is a good game. I enjoy it, but I feel like I can see the shadow of what will come forming in the horizon. It's just speculation for now. I still haven't finished the other two games, but I've played a few hours of Jak 2 as of the time of writing this, and I can already tell it's going to be a crazy ride. I hope you join me again when we get to it. So, we passed 1,000 subscribers and I just wanted to say thanks. This is still a really new channel and I didn't expect at all to get here so fast. Anyway, if you're still not subscribed, then there's still time to be one of the first 10 million. For the next video, I'm planning on doing Ocarina of Time. I'll try to get this one done in a more timely manner. Hope you'll enjoy it. If you're here for Crash, don't worry, I'll get to Wrath of Cortex soon. It was a marathon to get this video out after getting sick twice over the period of a month, so I'm gonna go pass out now. Bye.